What's going on, YouTube? Resistance Radio here, bringing you our first podcast, and I'm Gary.
This is Matt.
And we want to today talk about the good old Second Amendment.
Time to stir the pot.
It is time to stir the pot. Because you know what, man? Honestly, I don't know about you, but I know you're out west and you live in a very liberal area.
Well, California's that way.
Yeah, I live in a very liberal area as well, and I gotta tell you, a lot of people are not major gun control supporters out by me, and it's a pretty liberal area, but I know California is a lot different. But I will say this on the people that I talk to that aren't really for gun control. Also, I'm not in New York City, and I think a big portion of all the laws passed is because of the voting that comes out of New York City.
Oh, I'd say we're pretty much in the same boat too. I live up closer to Sacramento in the northern half of this state, and people up here kind of have a different philosophy than the people in Southern California, but that's where most of the population is. Like whenever you look at the map on an election, it's like the whole top half is red and the whole bottom half is just solid fucking blue.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like the more populated areas just kind of run in the lesser populated areas and the outskirts of the state or whatnot.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's just weird, but I wanted to bring that up. But where do you want to start here today? That we got a little bit to cover in our Second Amendment podcast here.
Well, usually I'd probably start off with like why we have it and why it's relevant today, because most of the people that I hear that are not necessarily against guns, they're just for heavy gun control. They don't want to ban them. They just keep a steady eye on them. Most of the complaints I hear from them are usually things along the lines of, well, it's an old document. When they wrote that, we had flintlocks, and now we have, fully automatic weapons these days. So, citizens don't need, quote unquote military grade weapons and things like that. Whether it just be an M16, which looks a lot like the AR that looks a lot like the M16, and I think a lot of people just get confused on why we have it, why it's necessary, and even just the differences between guns. I think a lot of people hear semi-automatic and get confused and think it's like you can just walk in somewhere and spray down a crowd with it or something. That's not the case.
Right. So why don't you take us through on why we have the Second Amendment?
Well, in my opinion, I'd say the framers threw that in there because they knew that it was necessary for a free state to be able to resist the state. Otherwise, you're just at the whim of the state, and that's not freedom. Even in modern days here, I think it was the late Anton Scalia in the Supreme Court justice said that basically, I'm going to paraphrase here, but I'll throw up a link for the actual quote if people are interested in reading it. But he said that it's basically, he was saying it was important for we the people to have guns and not necessarily just a state-ran militia, let's say, because I hear a lot of people say, well, we have state militias, basically the National Guard, but Anton Scalia here said it pretty good, where he says that basically the Second Amendment is referring to we the people, just your average Joe, not someone on the government payroll, because it was not necessarily a state-managed militia that resisted the British. It was just regular folk like you and I, let's say, that banded together and formed a militia to resist tyranny. And we people in modern times also need that ability, because at any point, things might be hunky-dory now, but flash forward 150 years from now, we might live under a very different government.
And I completely agree with that, and obviously I'm a big Second Amendment supporter, but I do want to ask you a question. You spent time in the military, you were a Marine. How many tours did you do, if you don't mind me asking?
I did two to Fallujah. Okay.
Now let's put our tinfoil hats on for a second. Did you guys ever have the conversation of what would happen if the government called on you to rise up against the citizens? Did you guys ever talk about any of this?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. And what was the kind of consensus among your guys? Was it no, we would definitely not do that, or hey, we're here for a paycheck, we'll do kind of what they say? What was kind of the consensus?
Well, if you join the Marine Corps, you're not really the while a lot of Marines get out of the Marine Corps and then become mercenaries while they're in, you don't really have a mercenary mindset. You're there for duty, not a paycheck necessarily. Um,
Right.
but no matter what branch you are, when you enlist, you raise your right hand and take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So really, it would come down to who is posing the offense to the Constitution and freedoms. For example, if the government said, you know what, we're going to declare martial law and definitely strip the citizens of their rights, we're probably turn our guns on the government. However, if there's
Right.
some communist revolution, well, that kind of threatens our freedoms as well, so we'd have to, quell that. But I
Okay,
think the
so
biggest duty is to defend our constitutional rights, because that's the main purpose of the military, is enforcing our constitutional freedoms.
okay, I can get down with that. I was just curious, kind of what the consensus was. All right. So I kind of wanted to talk about a couple things on the Second Amendment topic, and I was hoping maybe we could talk about this Fast and Furious that not a lot of media attention got.
Yeah, they seemed to just kind of breeze over that for like a few weeks, and not even a few weeks. It was like a couple
Yeah,
weeks, and that was
yeah,
that. Stuck a fork in
yeah. It
it.
was just it right. It was just popped up, and then it was all of a sudden just down, and nobody talked about it again. So I kind of wanted to hop in this and talk about it. You wanna list some things about Fast and Furious that you know, and I'll hop in here as well.
It's been a while, but I think it was something like the ATF um basically trafficked a bunch of weapons to the Mexican cartels. I think it was something like 2,000 weapons, and we promptly lost track of them as soon as we handed them over. And I think as far as I know, the only two we've recovered were from gunfights we've gotten into with our border patrol with these drug runners, basically, amongst other things, people as well. And I think that's after we killed a couple of them. That's how we recovered them, and that's the only way we've been able to track them. So
And you know what bothers me about this too is, so many people go out of the way to say, yeah, let's put gun control in the government's hands. Not that they don't fuck up everything that they touch
yeah,
anyway,
pretty much.
but you want to hand all the control over to the
It's basically
control, and they go and do this shit and give it to
yeah.
Mexican drug cartels who end up in turn killing a border patrol agent with the same gun they gave them. So it just some of that stuff.
Well, how
Fast and
could that
Furious.
possibly go wrong? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff just boggles my mind. And I just always wonder why people would even want the government to touch firearms. Like, another thing that really bothers me is I think a lot of people that are in support of gun control, like heavy gun control, are people that have A, never fired a firearm before, and B, have never been put in a situation where they've needed a firearm.
Yeah, that's an on the opening, statement there on what we've heard people say. That's a real common thing I've heard over here on the West Coast as well. Is well, I've never needed one. It's okay, well, cool. Just because you live in a safe place doesn't mean everyone does. Just because you
Right.
have a good police force doesn't mean everyone has a reliable one as well.
Well, when I first moved to New York, I think I had to wait 2 years before I could apply for my pistol permit. This was before the New York Safe Act. That's a whole nother long list, laundry list of bullshit. Um, Came out. But I was living in an apartment with a roommate, just had knee surgery, was in a mobilizer for 6 months, didn't own a firearm. I grew up around him, shot him a lot, never had any fear for him, just never went out and bought one. And I'm laying, I remember it was the middle of the summer, it was really hot, and I went to lay on the sofa and I left my bedroom window open, and my roommate happened to be at work that night, and I was passed out on the couch, dead asleep, and I woke up to somebody rustling around the TV area, And I woke up, looked up, and I had streetlights right outside the window, and they were kind of coming through the curtains a little bit. And I thought it was my roommate. And I'm like, hey, because I don't know if you've ever been in that phase where you're like half asleep, but you're like are kind of awake.
Yeah, like zombie mode.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, go back to sleep. We got to be at work in a couple hours, even though I wasn't working and didn't notice it wasn't my roommate. So I kind of fall back asleep for a second and I hear the rustling again. I look up and I finally the streetlights actually catch my eyes and I see that it's not my roommate. And at that point in time, full panic sets in. And
Oh,
I'm
I
talking
bet.
about like heart racing fucking panic. And mind you, I only lived at that time 2 blocks from, actually, it was a little more than that. It was maybe a half a mile from the police department. So thankfully, I had my cell phone and I dialed 911 pretty quick under the covers because I had that, I forget what type of phone I had, where you can like press the one button and it'll say like make an emergency call and you hit yes or whatever. So I did that real quick and I kind of like got up and was like, hey, what are you doing in my house? Like, and thankfully the guy took off running.
Yeah, you're
Right.
lucky.
Yeah, oh yeah, right. And that's what I wanted to bring up. Like my heart was racing. I mean, this guy had all sorts of electronics on the bed ready to go out the window that he came into, through my bedroom. And it took the police probably a solid 10 minutes to get to my house. And mind you, I'm not exaggerating, less than a half a mile away from my house. And it took them about 10 minutes. Now imagine in that situation if that person had a gun or a knife, or they were there
A
because
bat, anything, just didn't just bludgeon your
anything.
head in right off
Yeah.
the bat. You're lucky you got the call out in the first place.
Right, and after that time, I swore I'd never be a victim again. And the I think a couple maybe 2 years later, I mean, which is a long time, but I had to wait to get situated in my new residence area since I had just moved to the state. Went out and got a pistol as soon as I was cleared.
That's
I
crazy. It took
just
you 2 years to do. Is it 'cause it's like a state residency thing or
Yeah, like
something? I
because
gotcha.
I'm originally from Maryland, so I had to wait like the required time. Like I was going to community college up here when I was playing hockey, and I went to sign up for class. I just wanted to take a couple classes while I was work on getting some sort of degree, and if I had in-state tuition, it would cost me like $450, and it would cost me like a couple $1,000s to attend college.
Wow.
Yeah, so I put that on the back burner real quick. So yeah, it's just I'm a democratic held areas are a shit show for me. I don't like them.
Usually not.
Yeah.
I usually
So
like people staying the hell out of my business, unless if
yeah.
I invite them into it.
So we want to get into some statistics here and some myths and things like that on the Second Amendment.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that because I definitely want to jump into after we got done talking about that Fast and Furious. I want to talk about the Mexico crime rate since Mexico is a gun-free country.
Oh, much so. Yeah.
It's gun free. And let's talk about this. In February 2016, Mexico saw an average of 55 people murdered per day.
That's Chicago status. Also
Yeah,
another
as
great
of
place for
now.
gun control.
Right, right. I mean, geez, 55 people murdered per day. The first 2 months of 2016, 3,158 people killed. And that's from the Executive Secretariat for Public Security.
Yeah, not some National Enquirer
Right,
report
right.
there.
I don't know. That's just crazy to me. I mean, I thought gun control works. I don't know, Matt. Doesn't sound like it's working to me.
No, no. Well, the same could be said for pretty much any area that has the gun-free label on it. Like Chicago, they tried that out, didn't work too well. L.A., Detroit, fill in the blank, all those sorts of cities, huge gun control, huge, not even gun crime, but just crime in general. There's usually more breaking and entries, robberies, assaults, all sorts of shit.
Right.
It's
I
it, it
mean, we've
it
been.
really I think the biggest myth about gun control is that it reduces violence, and it does not. That's
Oh,
it's
that and assault rifles.
oh yeah, it's
The
non-existent.
magical, yeah, the unicorn in the room, the assault rifle. There's no
Uh,
such thing, people.
Well, no, and the term assault rifle even varies on definition from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, even within the same state a lot of times, just in different counties, different areas consider them, what is and is what not, and what is not an assault rifle. So it makes it real hard to keep track of that crap too. It's a real easy way for a law-abiding citizen who is following the rules to, get nabbed up for some stupid crap and do some prison time for a victimless crime. It's
Oh, absolutely.
kind of contributing towards the problem.
No, I agree. I mean, I love the people that sit there. Well, we need to ban fully automatic weapons.
Well,
They're
they have been since
murdering. Oh,
1934.
exactly. I know.
It's
I know. And if you have them, I think you have to be federally registered
oh
and
yeah.
taxed.
Oh, they're one of my buddies from the Marine Corps actually has that license, I guess you'd call it, and those things cost an arm and a leg. It's
Yeah.
as much as I love guns, it's not even worth it. It's
Right. Right.
which is
I
kind
just
of crap too, because that also not only is gun control a direct crap on the Second Amendment, it's also a big crap on the 14th Amendment under the immunities and privileges clause. I think it's the first section of the 14th Amendment. I'll have to brush up on that. But either way, it
yeah.
basically states that no state can make a law that hinders you from accessing your rights. Just like, in the South when they used to make you take a test before you voted, and it was, a way to keep minorities from being able to vote and crap like that. It's the
Right.
same sort of concept, but applied towards guns. It's just extra hurdles. Hell, here in California, starting this year, 2017, we have to have a background check and a license to buy ammo on top of the background check to get a gun in the first place.
Yeah.
This shit is ridiculous.
So I wanted to jump into Project Exile real quick.
Oh yeah, it's probably like the only form of gun control I've heard of that actually makes sense and works, but was shot down by Democrats because it worked
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
outright, just taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. So,
Right.
that doesn't fall into
So
the narrative.
yeah, so explain Project Exile to me, because before I had talked to you, I actually hadn't even heard of this, and it is very it's very good, I gotta say. So why don't you take us through Project Exile?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I hadn't really even heard of it much. Like, I heard the name, but I haven't really heard anything about it until, just recently before this video, and I was looking into it a bit more. And I don't know why people haven't put it on blast more, but basically, the rundown of it is it doesn't really impose any gun restrictions on your average law-abiding citizen, but what it is if you are a convicted violent felon and you get stripped of your Second Amendment, because, that happens if you're a known gangbanger, you don't get your Second Amendment anymore after you get arrested for doing a drive-by. Makes sense, I can agree with that. So basically, what Project Exile did is it focused less on just people who haven't committed any crimes, which is a lot of what blanket gun control is, and focused more on if you're a convicted felon and you get caught with a gun, you're doing, I think it's like 20 years right off the bat. It gives criminals a real incentive to stop packing heat after they've been ordered with due process to stop packing heat. And what's good about that is it 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 doesn't infringe on mine or your rights. You're a law-abiding citizen, which are the people you don't really need to worry about anyway, more often than not.
Right.
There are the people that walk into a dance club or a movie theater and are just batshit crazy and shoot up the place for the first time. But the vast majority of gun crime, in the United States at least, comes from gangs and gang activity. I think it's something like
Right.
90% or something outrageous like that.
Let's talk about gun control myths, actually. This is something I definitely want to cover with everybody listening. And we're going to go through more guns equal more crime. Guns are easy to buy. Most public shootings are done by quote unquote assault weapons. High capacity magazines are unnecessary and gun control works. So let's start at more guns equal more crime.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I think the first example that comes to mind is Washington D.C. I think they had like a 30-year uh, ban on handguns or some ridiculous crap like that, and the murder rate actually jumped roughly 8 times what it was for the national average at that time, which
Jesus.
would suggest that that doesn't work. Well, at the same time, I think it was Kensaw, if I'm pronouncing that right, Georgia, passed a law that required every household to own a gun. Now, obviously, that wasn't enforced until
Right.
Obamacare. The government couldn't force you to buy something, so. But I think it was just more of the message they were trying to send. And they got to watch their violent crimes decrease over that
Yeah.
same period. So it wasn't just some, heat wave of violence and that was the epicenter. There's some good direct correlations there, I would say.
Yeah. And you also see high profile shootings in a lot of gun free zones.
Oh yeah, like Chicago or Washington D.C., or
Yeah.
L.A. It's it.
It's just funny that a lot of places choose gun free zones to carry out their killings. I mean, if gun control worked, in all reality, a gun free zone, a sign should stop someone from coming there with a gun. Maybe they choose it because they know they have more time before somebody can do something.
Oh yeah, like
I don't know. Maybe
schools,
that's just me. Yeah,
like all these school shootings, and no one's
I
gonna
know.
shoot back at your
Maybe
ass.
maybe we're crazy. Maybe
Yeah,
it's us. I don't
maybe.
know.
Well, maybe we might be crazy, but at least we're safer because of it. So
Yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
crazy. I'll take it.
Oh, I will too. I'm gonna go with that because you know what? I don't leave my house without mine. So
Yeah, not to mention that in these places where these high profile, like mass shootings, whatever you want to call them, happen, a lot of those places, those assault weapons are already banned.
right.
So, look at Paris and their shooting, it, it doesn't stop people who are intent on doing harm from doing harm,
Right,
just
because
like
now they just use trucks and cars and
or bringing
whatever
guns
else.
anyway,
Yeah, or
it's
bring guns
they don't give
anyway.
no
Yeah, right.
crap, shit.
Right. All right, so let's talk about guns are easy to buy because I always hear people, oh, the loophole. We had to close the loophole.
Oh shit. Well, like you just said, it took you 2 years just because you're still a U.S. citizen. You just moved to a different state, and you still have to take 2 years to wait to get one. In
Oh, right.
most states, there's well, federally, no matter what state you're in, you have to pass a background check before you're allowed to leave that gun
Oh,
store.
my. Oh, Jesus. You want to talk about some ridiculous shit I had to go through? Okay, listen. Before we get into guns are easy to buy, because this is not a purchase that was
Factual.
easy for me to buy. First thing I had to do was um, make sure that I had my residency, which took me 2 years. I had to go down and fill out paperwork at the police station to get into a NRA approved class. I had to submit my money and payment. I had to go through that 8 hour class, and um, after that 8 hour class, I had to pass a test. After the class was done, I had to go back to the police station. I had to get fingerprinted. I had to get a background check through the police station. A local, like you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say, a background check
Yeah.
through the state. And then I had to wait 30 days for them to approve me. And then I could go purchase my firearm. And once I purchased my firearm, they obviously have to do everything through the gun store there. Then I had to wait to get my class information before I could even go pick up my firearm. So I ended up actually, it took me about 6 months from the start date to the end date for me getting my firearm. Actually, me and my wife went through at the same time, and she got hers in January of 2014, and I got mine in February of 2014.
Yeah.
It took us 6 months. 6 months.
And California's not much better. Uh, to buy a handgun is a lot harder than buying rifles, but I'm more of a rifle guy. But over here, you've still got to pass your state level background check, federal level background check. Now, now we have to have a background check to buy ammunition as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
That's, I'm sure that'll reduce shootings drastically, because you can't just, blow your own ammo anyway, or,
Right, right.
just buy it from someone who can buy it.
Don't make them don't they don't know they're dumb yet.
Yeah, well,
Don't say anything.
it reminds me of being in high school, like playing Hey Mister out in front of the liquor store, because you're a high school kid. Hey
Yeah.
Mister, you mind buying a pack of beer? We'll
Right.
sweeten the deal somehow. Buy them
Yeah.
their beer too, or whatever.
But all right, so let's get back to guns are easy to buy because I want to let you guys know to legally purchase, sell, or trade a firearm, you have to go through an FFL dealer and conduct a background check, regardless of the state of residence. And it's already illegal to trade, sell, or gift a gun to someone without going through an FFL. So if anybody tells you otherwise, if you're arguing with somebody and they're saying, "Oh, guns are so easy to buy," no, they're not. Most people own guns anyway, but if you're listening and you don't own a firearm and you're just trying to get some information on the Second Amendment, guns are not easy to buy. All right, let's
But
just
Gary,
nip that in
what
the bud
about
right now.
what about gun shows? Can't you just buy a gun at a gun show and skip on out of there with it?
Yeah, it'd be sweet if you could, because that's where I'd go for my firearms. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
I'm pretty sure like 90% of all guns would be bought there then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's something I hear a lot too, even from other gun owners, like, oh, well, you could just go to a gun show. It's like, no, you have to be a federally licensed dealer to sell one of those. You still gotta pass some kind of background check or register it or what the hell ever. It's
Right.
not just some off the books, you know, goddamn Bloods and Crips can just walk up in there and buy guns at the ready. It's not the way it works.
Did you just assume somebody's gang affiliation?
Well, if you're gonna if you are gonna ban guns from someone, that ought to be the thing to do it, I suppose, not just being a
Yeah, I agree.
law-abiding citizen.
All right, so let's hop into the third thing, which is most public shootings are done by assault weapons. Most public shootings are done by assault weapons. So assault weapons have already been banned federally throughout the country, and we've already touched on this a little bit with the National Firearms Act 1934. They do have to be registered and they're taxed heavily, and as you heard Matt earlier, you have to give an arm and a leg to have one of those things,
Yeah,
which I might do if I could.
I think it's like $450 just to apply. They could still deny you at that point.
Oh
It's
God.
it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
If they can find any reason to deny you. If he wasn't in the military, he probably wouldn't have gotten it. Usually you have to, demonstrate that you're a trustworthy like if the government has been giving you fully automatic weapons for a while and you haven't screwed it up yet, you'll probably get it. But if you're your average Joe, I'd imagine it could be quite a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, so we know that most public shootings are not done by assault weapons. They're done by pistols, not quote
Well,
unquote assault rifles.
and that's the problem we were talking about earlier is the definition of assault rifle. It varies from place to place, from law
Right.
jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So, like here in California, if it's magazine fed, that's one strike. If it's got a bayonet lug because you're worried about getting stabbed when someone's shooting at you, that's another strike. It's they're, they're less focused on the capability of the weapon and more or less what it looks like.
Right, of course. Because, they look so scary.
Well, and that's the thing too I've yet to see an assault weapon or any real gun control come against unsafe weapons, like the quality of the weapon, not just the gun itself.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, I own a couple rifles, but in the state of New York, you can't have a pistol grip on your firearm. And I've actually been to the gun store where
Oh,
they've
same here in California, yeah.
right, and they've told me they've actually had people live firing these guns and drop them on the fucking range. That's fucking unsafe.
No,
You
definitely.
think I want to be shoot by somebody that drops their fucking rifle? You know?
Yeah, well, and that's another. Guns just don't go off when you drop them, but nonetheless, the,
Right,
the,
but
the point
still.
is, if they're hard to handle, they're less safe than if they're comfortable and easy to
Right,
control.
and that's the
Yeah.
point. Like they're making things more unsafe for the law-abiding citizens that are actually out following the laws.
Well, God forbid you can have good control over, any tool for that matter, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
All right. Why don't we go through high cap mags are unnecessary? Why don't you take us through that?
oh, definitely. A lot of the time, especially here in California, because we have a law out here where anything over 10 rounds is a high capacity mag. That's years in prison if you get caught with that. Um, and the argument I always hear for it is, well, you can just walk in and unload 30 rounds into a crowd of people, and no one needs to be able to do that. Well, I got a few things to say. For one, uh, if it's not uncommon for when people break into houses, they usually have like a buddy in crime or an assailant, or sometimes a group of them. Here in the town I live in, we just had a light rail put in, and it. I live in a pretty nice town, I'm not gonna lie, but that light rail goes through some parts of town and other towns that aren't so pleasant, let's say. So a lot of times, a group of them would hop on the light rail, catch it up in here to my town, get off, run up into people's houses, grab a bunch of crap, and then just catch the light rail back down to, where they lived. It was ridiculous for a while. So if you have 3 or 4 people breaking into your home, you might need more than just 10 rounds, because when you shoot, if you get in a gunfight, because let's suggest that they're armed as well, because a lot of times they are, if you get in a gunfight, you miss more often than you hit. So if you've got 3 or 4 people coming at you with, let's say they only have 10 round mags, they're law-abiding criminals, let's say, and they have 10 round mags, and that's it. That's still 40 rounds coming at you, and you only have 30 in a quote-unquote high-cap mag, so you're still at a disadvantage, even with that high-capacity mag.
Right.
And for the argument of you can walk into a movie theater and just unload on people, whether you shoot someone in the face 10 times or you just shoot them a couple of times in the face, dead is dead. If anything, let them waste ammo on someone who's already dead so people who aren't dead can continue to live, just spraying into a crowd is not any more effective than taking 10 well-placed shots into a crowd of people.
Right. Oh,
Uh,
I agree.
uh,
I completely agree.
I forget what sheriff's department did it. I'll post a link in the description. But a sheriff's department, I think it was from Georgia, also did a study on this, because another argument is, well, if they only have 10 round mags, someone can rush up and tackle them while they're reloading, and whoever ran up and tackled someone in any of these mass shootings, so I don't
Right.
buy that for one bit.
We had a like a thing on our my campus for my job where it was talking about active shooters, and the guy that's giving the fucking speech is obviously a hippity dippity liberal, all against guns. And I raised my hand and asked, why don't you let concealed carry on property? Oh, we can't have that. We can't have guns on property. Blah blah blah. And then I said, okay, well, if we can't do that, why don't you guys hire security guards from the military that are out that probably could use a job that know how to handle a firearm? And it was, well, we already have security. Yeah, we have security that have fucking flashlights. They don't even have fucking pepper spray. They have fucking flashlight. What are they going to do? Flash them to death? I
Oh yeah,
mean, and they give you this big spiel. Oh, fight back with anything you can find. Fire hydrant. Fuck
except
you.
for something that's effective though.
Yeah,
Pick up a chair like it's Jerry Springer and throw it at him,
right. Like, that's
because
gonna fucking do anything.
yeah, you bring a mag light to a gunfight, you're gonna lose.
Right. I mean, how about you just let us fucking
Defend
conceal
yourself.
carry and defend ourselves?
Yeah, because once again, you still have to pass, background checks and all sorts of crap, not only to buy that gun, but to get the carry permit as well. That's like a
Yeah.
double whammy on security right there.
Right. I mean, and for my class, you have to go through. It's a whole bunch of different variations, shooting from different positions, range wise, targets out at different yardage. Um,
Oh yeah, and how many?
double tapping the target without stopping from firing. You have to load the mag. Yeah, I mean, you have to do all sorts of things.
Well, yeah, you definitely have to show that you're proficient with the weapon.
Right.
And,
Correct.
and how many of these mass shootings have occurred from people with concealed carry permits?
Oh, I'd
I'd
love to
venture to
get
say
that
zero
statistic.
or pretty damn close to it.
Yeah, it's
'Cause I'm
absurd.
sure that the news would smear that all over the
Oh,
headlines. Oh,
they
look, we got
would.
to take these away now too. I'm sure they'd snap at that opportunity. So,
Oh, absolutely. So obviously, the last touching with gun control works. It obviously doesn't, because the vast majority of shootings happen in gun-free zones, and out of the major cities in the country with the most gun control, have the highest gun crime.
oh,
So,
definitely.
go figure that one out. I don't know.
No,
But
definitely.
I just wanted to touch on everybody that actually stuck around to listen. Thank you for checking out Resistance Radio, and we wanted to let you guys know we're actually going to be getting a webcam so you can actually see us communicating.
We're
We just wanted to
beautiful.
get a yeah, we are beautiful.
Got these
We just wanted to
gorgeous
get
blonde locks.
yeah, you are a sexy beast, sir.
A handsome man.
We just wanted to get this video out there, put some content out there for you guys, and we hope you enjoyed. Remember to hit that subscribe button because if you do not, you are probably a commie.
No,
Have a
pretty
good
much.
one.
Oh, and
Have a good one,
be sure
guys.
to leave a comment in the comments too on if you're why you're for the Second Amendment, and if you're opposed to it, try to leave a calm concern with gun control or guns in general, and we'll try to address those the best we can as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Actually, I'd like to hear from people that aren't for guns. That would actually make me pretty happy because I
Yeah,
would love
definitely.
to talk to somebody about that. All right, well, you guys have a good one, and we will see you next time.
Take it easy.